one, there was an audio problem. Technology gets the best of us at times, I guess. My name is Prash K. I am a hi everyone. I'm a well-being, emotional intelligence, and leadership expert and coach. I'm the founder of Stress to Success and Urban Spirituality, and I'm delighted to be here. This is the second attempt at doing this video and this live on why your story could change lives and how to go about telling it. That's what this is going to be about. Why your story could change lives, why it matters, and how to start telling your story. So first and foremost, I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. So do just check in and let me know if somebody can comment and just let me know that you can hear me this time. And we're free of technology challenges. That would be awesome. Just check in here and let me know. Welcome everybody. It's great to have you on this live. Really, really good to have you. Somebody just let me know that you can hear me okay. And that'll be awesome. And then I'll carry on and not repeat myself. Although the message is actually really worth repeating. Understanding why we should tell our story, understanding the importance of that is super important. It makes a huge difference in everyone's lives. So if somebody could let me know that they can hear me fine, that would be awesome. I'll just kind of patiently wait until somebody kicks in and says something. We're live on multiple platforms, so just let me know that you can hear me, okay? Yep, we can hear you. Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you so much. So folks, what the hell is the importance of sharing your story? Why? Why even bother? We're all busy. What does it even matter? Well, folks, let me just say this. Over the years, I have had countless clients, coaching clients who have gradually come to open up and share their story. I've made it a point with a lot of them to get them to open up, to share their story. Part of being with a client, taking a client through a coaching or a training journey, you want to understand their story. When you want to help somebody, you got to understand their story, where they've been, where they want to go. So when I work with people, they start to open up, they share their story. But here's the beauty. When they start opening up their story and where they've been, there's a certain powerful shift that happens in the direction that they want to go. What that means is when you start telling your story, and not just tell your story and let yourself be owned by that story, but when you own your story, when you start telling your story and share the mistakes, the ups and downs that you've had, the highs and lows, the highlights of your life, the lowlights of your life, when you start sharing that authentically in a safe space, really powerful transformations happen. Two particular things are happening at this time. One, the people who hear your story or aspects of your story, they can make powerful shifts in their lives. It can change lives. And two, you start making a shift inside yourself because you recognize that you're not your story. You don't have to be owned by your story. You see, many of us are owned by our story. We're owned by our mistakes. We're slaves to the wrong decisions we made, the divorces that we had. I've been divorced, right? I was feeling terrible about it for ages. With the jobs that we screwed up at, the other screw ups that we've had, we're often so stuck in feeling bad about what we've done. And that negative energy doesn't help us ultimately. It keeps us stuck in that past. And we end up, you know what I'm going to say, we end up recreating a lot of the stuff, and we perpetuate the mistakes of the past in the future. And sadly, for many of us, it goes down into our future generations. Our kids pick that up. We don't mean it, but they do. So when you start to recognize your story, and when you start to capture it and start to share it, you, in that process, realize that you're not your story. You actually realize you're not your story. You realize that you're not your story. And when you realize that you're not your, oh no. When you realize that you're not your story, when you recognize that you're not your story, you can recognize that you own your story, not the other way around. And when you own your story, and you can take it and accept the good and the bad, the highs and the lows, when you can accept that, you can start to shift in all your areas of your life, your health, emotionally, because emotionally it affects our physicality. So when we shift emotionally, when we heal emotionally, our physical health can improve. When we start to heal here and in our heart, our work improves, our relationships with our colleagues at work. If we're a leader or a business owner, those dealings start to improve. We're a better leader. And I'm passionate about being a leader, and leadership as part of the coaching and training. You become a better leader at work, At home, if you're a family, you can become a better leader for your tribe, for the people that you care for. So many good things happen when you own your story and you start to share it. And, I want to share by way of an example. Recently, I have, those of you guys who probably know, I have a podcast. I've been running it for a good few years, Urban Spirituality. So I'm often interviewing people, of course, during the podcast, and I have guests on the show. They tell me their story. But sometimes I get interviewed and I get put on a show, and I'm asked to tell my story. And recently I told my story on a podcast, and one interesting person came back to me. I often get people kind of coming back and giving feedback. There was a particular lady in South Africa, reached out to me, a single mother in her 40s, but she was going through a bit of a relationship breakup with somebody who wasn't good for her. And she started opening up about her story. And you know what she said? She goes, when she had heard me sharing some of my story, the ups and downs that I had, losing my mom at 13, getting bullied, and then joining a gang later on, getting into fights, then turning to some degree of alcohol dependency after losing my mom, meeting a monk, and then that changed the direction of my life because of spirituality and the wisdom he shared. Some random guy in the street, losing my dad, getting divorced. When I started opening up about my story, she said that she saw parallels. She saw aspects of that story where she realized that what she had experienced, which were similar things in some areas, it was okay. And she realized that she was holding on to this guilt, this blame, that it was all her fault. Losing her mom, her divorce, her relationship breaking down. And now the guy that she's with, she was kind of with, who was a bit of a narcissist. All of these things she was able to start to recognize because she detached herself. And in that moment, in hearing my story, she realized that the story doesn't own me. It no longer has to own me. I can own my story. I can accept the mistakes I've made. And now I can set myself free gradually. Does that make sense? And I think that is the power that lies within our ability to share our story. When we do that, two people benefit. The listeners of that benefit, and they can make changes, like this lady from South Africa, or anyone who listens to this. And we benefit because when we share our story, we re-embolden and we reprogram within ourselves that we are the masters of our destiny, that our story has brought us to where we are. Our story may have shaped who we are, but our story doesn't own who we are. We own who we are, and we own that story. And when we recognize that, powerful shifts happen. Like I said, at home, in our relationships, in our workplaces, wherever we are. And no lockdown, no virus can change that fact. Wherever we are, when we start to own our story, we can change the direction of where our life goes. That's the power that holds with us. And so I hear you asking me, well, who wants to hear my story? Why should I tell my story to somebody? Who wants? You say, who wants to hear my story? Who wants to hear my story? Well, let me tell you, folks, so many people want to hear your story. Here's a fact. There is no story that exists that's not worth telling. Every story matters. Every story. We just don't give ourselves the credit that we've got something to share. That's the problem. We have imposter syndrome. We think we're not a guru or a teacher or some great personality, and therefore we don't have anything to share. The fact of the matter is that whoever we are, or whatever age we are, we have something to share. But we've got to give ourselves the chance. We've got to give ourselves that chance to share it. Now, who do we share it with? It could be one person. It could just be your neighbor. You go out for a walk and you're walking with your neighbor and you share it. It could be with a family member that you haven't met for a while. It could be with a friend. It could be with a group of people. It could be a colleague at work. But the magic lies in opening up and sharing your story. Even if it's one person, two people, three people, you can go online and do it like this. You can share with the world, but it doesn't have to be. It could be just one person or a handful of people. And you've got to be brave to do it. You have to have courage. But when you swallow that courage pill, when you accept and own what you have, and you take that courage pill and you recognize that the value and the importance of sharing your story outweighs the fear of sharing your story, right? Does that make sense? It's a coaching technique. You make the importance, the significance of sharing your story more important than the fear that you have about wanting to share your story, the resistance, the lack, right? You just go out and you share it anyway because you know it will do some good. And that's why we've been talking about why it's so important to share your story. Hopefully that's clear to you now. But when you share your story like this, when you share like this and you take that courage pill and you share even a little bit about your story, doesn't mean your whole story, a little bit, that powerful sharing can make so much difference, even to that one person that you share it with. So how do you share your story? And I know some of you may be saying, I'm afraid of sharing my story. What will people say? What will people do? How will they react? What if they know me and they say it? Let me say this. Number one, nobody says that you have to share your whole story. We're not talking about, don't feel the pressure of sharing your whole story. And I'm going to show you a small blueprint that will allow you to share your story. I'm going to go through this process in a moment, so hang with me. I'm going to show you a simple process that I've used. I use with my clients, my coaching clients, even in corporates. I've used this with leaders to help them to bring their story. I've had leaders sit in rooms and cry with me because they never felt they had that voice to share it, and they couldn't share it with their teams. So a lot of magic happens when you can do this. So bear with me. I'm going to show that. If you feel fearful for sharing your story, don't worry. We don't need to be sharing our whole story. This is practicing the muscle, developing the compassion and the courage to be able to share even a little bit of your story in an authentic way that allows other people to relate to you better, and that allows other people to realize that they have hope in their own lives and that they can make a change and that they can improve. Okay? So let me share this roadmap with you. Okay? Start by having a piece of paper, and on a simple piece of paper, draw an axis, XY axis, okay? XY axis like this. Get an axis. On that axis, the horizontal axis, you chart your age, right? From 0 upwards, like in blocks of 5 or 10, 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, so on. On your vertical axis, you chart the highs and lows. Like you draw where something was a highlight, where something was a low light. And what you do by doing this is, over those years, you can start making a map of some of the key aspects of your life. So for example, me, bullied, low light, at the age of 5 to 10, bullied at school. Then another low light, mother passed away at 12 years old, 13 years old. My mom died. Then a highlight, I graduated and it was a great time. Then a low light, I couldn't find work. Then a highlight, I got a job. Then a low light, I lost my dad. And what you're doing, then a highlight, I got married. Then a low light, I got divorced at 24. So what I'm encouraging you to do is start to chart what that looks like. It doesn't have to be in detail. What you're looking is just maybe 5, 3, 4, 5. You don't have to have 10, even 4 or 5 points, which are highlights and lowlights of your life. Chart them on a story. And what happens is when you start to chart that story, just by you drawing that story, you start to detach yourself from those incidences. You may feel the pain. You may feel, and you may relive a little bit of that pain when you got divorced, when you lost your parent or loved one, when something tragic happened. But what happens is the more you bring it out and put it on paper, the more it comes out from your subconscious, and the more you start to heal. It's catharsis. That's what's happening. Without you realizing, you're starting to heal. And as you start to heal, by bringing out these things, you're able to create a fresh space for new things to enter. Does that make sense? Because you and I, we cannot life that we want if we're holding on to the things that don't serve us. You don't need a motivational coach like me to tell you this. You know this. We all know this inside ourselves. So when we start to draw out our story and put some of those highlights and lowlights and chart them, we do that without judging them, okay? We don't get stuck in them. Remember this saying, I'm going to say this to you. It's okay to visit the past, but don't live there. I'll say that again. It's okay to visit the past, but don't live there. So what we're doing when we're doing this is we're charting this timeline of our highlights and lowlights of our story, right? Key points of our story. So start to chart them out. Resist the temptation to judge yourself. Don't live in the past, and start to become detached and recognize that that was a part of you That was an experience that you had, and now you are the you today, and that the future is within your hands. The future is uncharted. It is completely within your hand for this. Does that make sense? So when you've started to chart this and you've made out this timeline, the second thing you want to do is start to go into a little bit more detail, flesh out a couple of the points under each one of those 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 highlights of your life so far, highlights and lowlights. Start to put 2 or 3 bullet points under each one. And what that does is, again, it will help you to be able to articulate that story to people, number one. But secondly, it will magically and mysteriously start to dislodge that story from within you and make that story, stop that story from owning you anymore, and allow you to speak about it without emotional exertion, without emotional trauma, that you will start to detach yourself from that thing. And so you will no longer be bound by it, but owned by it. You'll recognize it as a lesson because of that detachment. That's a spiritual technique, right? In spirituality, one of the most important qualities is detachment. You know, it's one of the things I share so many times again and again on urban spirituality on the podcast, that we've got to learn to be able to detach. And it doesn't mean a lack of compassion. It means that we're able to step back and see something for what it is and then move on. Does that make sense? So flesh out each part of that story, okay? Flesh out a couple of bullet points in each one. When you fleshed out a couple of these things, if an emotion comes up and you feel upset and you feel angry or whatever it is, whatever that emotion is, upset, anger, live with it. Just let it be there. Ride it through, breathe through the emotion. You may be upset, but just breathe through that emotion. Work through it, write that story. As you've tapped it out and you put this story out, you'll have some bullets. Now you have highlights and lowlights of your life. You have some bullets to go with it. You've started to detach yourself from that so you can be a fuller, fresher, and freer you. Right? That means you're a happier person to be with. You're a more empowered person to hang around with. You're a more powerful person. You're a more inspirational person because you've freed yourself from the burden of your story. And at the same time, you've also, and this is the other important thing, you know, sometimes in life we get imposter syndrome. We feel like we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't achieve this, we can't achieve that. Well, when you look back at your past life, your past victories, right? The highlights of your life, you start to recognize that you've actually accomplished a lot. And you start to recognize that you have done great things. Maybe you weren't giving yourself enough credit. Does that make sense? And you realize that what you've accomplished, even though in other people's eyes it may be small, but in your eyes it's a big thing. You know, you passed that driving test. You got your degree. You got that job in that law firm that you always coveted. Whatever those things are, to other people, they might be small, but to you, they're big. And when you go back and relive that story, you start to re-celebrate those powerful areas. And when you do, what you're doing is you're topping up your empowerment tank, your vitamin E. You're topping up your vitamin E, your empowerment battery, your tank. It allows you to overcome obstacles in the future. It builds your resilience. I mean, I can go on and on about these things as a well-being coach, and it's my passion. But let's just suffice it to say that so many benefits happen when you celebrate those victories and you chart them, you document them. Okay, now once you've documented them, you've got some bullets. The next thing you want to be able to do now is you've got to find a way to tell that story. And now let me give you a few ideas of how you can do it. The first way, speak about your story, an aspect of that. Pick one aspect of those 4 or 5 or 8 things you've picked. Just pick 1 or 2 and just share those 2 things, 1 or 2 or 3 things with somebody who you trust, somebody who you care for. And maybe somebody who doesn't know that aspect of your life. Or maybe it's somebody who does, but you want to reshare it with them. When you're real, authentic, and you go through and share it with them, most people will listen. They'll give you the time of day. Just share an aspect of that story. You could share an aspect of that story with a colleague at work or a neighbor. Maybe you can open up and you can ask them to tell you their story. So you can encourage them. Because the beauty is when you open up about your story, it kind of magically gives people permission to open up about their story. So you could ask them like, hey, tell me a little bit about your story. I want to tell you a little bit about mine and I'd love to hear yours. Does that make sense? And you start to get into this really good exchange about sharing each other's stories without judgment. And as you share your story, even little aspects, you don't have to feel so shy then, because you're not sharing the whole thing and you're not bringing out all your dirty laundry. Okay. I know some of you might be thinking, well, I don't want to bring out my dirty laundry with everybody and any random, but nobody has to do that. You could pick one highlight, two highlights. You could pick a low light. You could pick a highlight and a low light. Doesn't matter. You pick something from your story and you share what you feel that you want to share, and you share with somebody. And in doing so, you'll start to practice the muscle of opening up and sharing. And that's another benefit happens when you start sharing your story. You start to become more authentic and your confidence builds as you share your story. That's one way to share your story with somebody like that. A second way to share your story is go digital, as I'm doing right now and as I've done. Go on video, share something on one of your social media platforms. Go on video. If you feel brave, you don't have to share your whole story. You could just share one aspect, right? Go on live, spend 2 minutes going live and saying, folks, my name is so-and-so, and I know you don't know me. I know you all don't know me, but I just want to share one life lesson I learned from this aspect of my story, this highlight of my life in the past when I was 20 years old, or this low light. And I just want to share it because it might help somebody, right? Like just real authentics, just spend a couple of minutes and share. That's the second way. Go on social media, share a little bit about your story with people. Thirdly, you could write. You don't want to share with the world, just write it. You could write just one aspect because you've done that previous work. You did the timeline, you did the bullet, so you can now expand on it. Write a little aspect about your story. Share it that way in written form, on social media, on WhatsApp. Maybe you don't share it with anyone but the diary. And it's okay if you want to share it on a diary and nobody sees it, that's okay. Because when you share, even just with yourself on paper, it's still powerful, it's still healing, and it's still helping you to start to own your life and own your story. So share that way. That's the third way. Just write. Share it with people on a blog, on social media, or just write for yourself. Or maybe you share with one person on an email, maybe a family member who's missed you or who you've missed. Maybe you can write something about an incident that you had and you guys had a fight and you've broken up with somebody or fallen out with somebody. Maybe you can write to them and say, look, this is what happened. This is what happened for me. And I just want to get this off my chest. And I want to say, I appreciate you for what you are. And there's no judgment. Find a way to write your story. That's the third way. And the fourth way is to dictate, speak your story. We all have mobile phones. We all have devices that we can speak to. Use your dictaphone, and on your phone, just dictate your story. Just dictate that story. Say something. Share it. It doesn't have to be shared with anyone. It could stay with you in your life. It doesn't have to go anywhere. But you just speak. Speak to the microphone. You don't have to speak to a camera. If you're camera shy, it doesn't matter. Just speak to the mic. Record on your dictaphone aspect of your story. You don't have to share it with anyone afterwards. But when you do so, that's when the change happens. Even just with yourself. And so many people here, I'm looking at the comments, people have been sharing their stories already. And what an amazing testimony to see so many people expressing how they have shared their stories and what benefit it's brought them in their lives. And I imagine, of course, the people around them as well, because that's the magic that happens when you share your story. So folks, there you have it. 4 different ways to share your story that I've given, and it doesn't have to be your whole share story. So whether you're shy and really camera shy, super shy, or whether you're semi-shy and you're just kind of scared, or whether you're kind of quite confident and you don't really care and you're going to share it anyways, whichever end of that spectrum you are, these are 4 ways that you can start to share aspects of your story, your life, your journey. Start to share those things with the people around you and watch the magic happen. Watch the magic happen in their lives. Watch the magic happen in your life. That, my friends, is my insights for you for sharing and telling stories. Forgive me if I can't reach out to all the questions and respond here, but it's been amazing to share. Freedom from your story, Mina says, absolutely. The daily practice of meditation is a powerful tool to help you become mindful of your emotions. Absolutely. There are so many good comments coming in from people here. This is for us. I'm sharing this because, like I said, in recent times, to have people come out to me because of an interview where I shared my story on an interview on a podcast, and for people to come back and say, look, this story changed my life here, or it made an impact. It inspired me so much that I thought every single one of us has a story worth telling. And we just need to take that courage and take that compassion and use those powerful forces, the desire to share, contribute, and give compassion to others, and the importance of having courage ourselves and using those dual forces to be able to step on a platform where we can share our story, no matter how small, no matter how little or more of our story, but to start to share it. So that's it from me. I hope that's been helpful. And if you are inspired, then do check out the podcast, Urban Spirituality. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Audible, Amazon Music. It's on all your favorite platforms. Check out Urban Spirituality with myself, Prash. Just Google it, Urban Spirituality, Prash. Check it out. Check out the Urban Spirituality channel, because I sure as hell share people's stories on Urban Spirituality on the YouTube channel. So check out the YouTube channel. Obviously, you know where we are on Facebook, Urban Spirituality, the Facebook group, Mantra Therapy. And if you're on LinkedIn, go say hi. My profile is the well-being guy. Go reach out. And if you know somebody who needs this in their lives, or if you're an organization or a business owner or somebody working in corporate and you think this kind of real talk, it's about time that we get this kind of authentic real talk happening in organizations, hit me up. I gave up. I mean, that's part of my story. I gave up a corporate life and a steady paycheck to do this, to be a coach, to be a motivator, to be an influencer, an expert. I gave that stuff up to be this because I knew I wanted to make a difference in lives. I have an incredible family, elders, and people who sacrifice so much to help me to reach me where I am. And I just want to give back. That's what drives me. So what's your mission? What's driving you right now? And how can your story help somebody in your life? Think about that and let that motivate you to share your story with people. I hope that's been helpful. If there's any topic or any particular theme that you think would be useful, I'm going to maybe do a few more of these lives. If you don't get tired of my face, I'm probably going to hit in and do a few more like this from time to time. So hit me up with any topics that you think are worthwhile, trending, important, of relevance, and I'll do my best to see if I can do a live on it. I hope that's been helpful. That's it from me. Peace out. Namaste. God bless everybody.